you know who's in command here?
Yeah.
How you doing, Ramon?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm doing very well. It's good to talk to you. We always have
Yeah,
good, interesting conversation.
well, thank you, thank you.
Yeah,
And as soon as I came across this text, I knew it was
Yeah.
for your channel. I just
Uh-huh.
knew that this was the place I would like to come on.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about it. When I first wrote my first EPMC paper on the aliens,
Yeah.
I compared plasma electromagnetic cosmology with the ancient architects, and I admitted I was not able to disregard that hypothesis as much as I'm reluctant to say hypothesis. And that's not to say I don't believe in any aliens at all. It's just that the Sitchin stuff is so compelling, and yet it's not a scientific hypothesis. And so, of course, I desired to rectify the two between, Talbot Thornhill type material and Sitchin. I wanted to reconcile them. I had started a research group on Facebook a couple years ago to look into all the different evidences, and I admitted I couldn't. Today I can announce finally our community, we can put it to bed. Okay, we can put this. So it does not get rid of UFOs. It just gets rid of
Right.
Okay.
Oh well,
Now,
I'm interested. Yeah, let's check into it. Let's get into it.
This text, Enki and the World Order, is a primary source text, and
Okay.
it's going to help us. So I think you could just hit the space bar or something like that. It's an ancient text translated by scholars, not Sitchin. It is a primary source, and we can consider this a witness level type text. Hit the left arrow, go back.
Left arrow, go back. Okay.
Yeah. It answers questions about potential identities of Nibiru or Nibiru, and if Venus was indeed cometary, and it defines the relationship of the two brothers very clearly, and it establishes Enlil's identity firmly as that of the Great Mountain. Okay, next.
Okay.
So these are what follows in white is the text. So when people see the white text, that is the text. So grandiloquent Lord of heaven and earth, self-reliant Father Enki, engendered by the bull, etc., cherished by Enlil, the Great Mountain. So right away, boom, right out of the gate, the Great Mountain is most definitely Enlil. Beloved by Holy On, nest tree planted in the Absu, rising over all the lands, great dragon who stands in Eridug. So now we know that Eridug has to be a place. Whose shadow covers the heaven and earth, grove of vines extending over the land, etc. More great descriptions of Enki. At the end, this is the important. Well, it does say the great mooring post of heaven and earth, which is the Absu. But then it says Enki, from whom a single glance is enough to unsettle the heart of mountains. I think that there's the first reference to the thunderbolts in here. And then later on, it says, unvisited by man, you have fixed your gaze on the heart of the land like a halal reed. Now, unvisited by man jumped out to me. To me, that sounded very clearly like it was describing something in the sky that you could not jump to, that you could not get into a boat or onto even a spaceship or anything and get to it. That it was something that they could see, like the heavens, but it was not capable of being reached. Also, it establishes Enki as the fertility god.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, it goes on and on throughout this, explaining in more text that I haven't included, that everything that Enki does brings about the growth of animals and plants.
Okay.
And it makes this point throughout the entire text. And that's really, really, so this is, if Enki is the fertility god, and we know that Saturn is the fertility god, then Enki must be Saturn. So that means that the great mountain cannot be Saturn. The great mountain must be Jupiter. Do you follow me?
Yeah, but
And we're gonna,
okay. I'll let you just get me there. Yeah. Okay.
Now, when it says beloved by On,
yeah.
the key to remembering this is that On, in the research that I've been doing, is the dwarf star, not Saturn. And I love Dave Talbot's work, and I've cited it many times. However, Kronos is the star after it started to change. Yes.
Okay. Well,
But
if Kronos is okay, go ahead. I'm following you.
We can call it Kronos if we like.
Mhm.
Later, when the gas giant is castrated, it loses some of its moons. It becomes Hera. But in the beginning, it is Kronos, but it's not the original star like what we're talking about.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Hera is Earth, right? I thought that was another name for Earth. Hera.
Yeah, but when we talk about Heracles, talking about the that Ares or Mars is the warrior of Hera, and it was something to be seen in the sky. Now, Shamash, I think, is a better name for this dwarf star, or Zervan. Maybe Mazda, but I prefer Shamash. I think that it's got a great ring to it. But it needs to be really clear to people that On is not merely the Aten, but it is the entire star. All right, so let's go into the fertility god here.
All right.
So
next.
Yeah. So what the priest told Solon was that the Greeks were like children and that they had forgotten everything after the flood. Zeus is not the fertility god. Now, maybe he did toss stones over his shoulder, but he's not the fertility god. So counting the days and putting them up.
Saturn, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Counting the days, putting the months in their house so as to complete the years and submit the completed years to the assembly for decision, taking decisions to regularize the days. So this is clearly establishing the orbits. Father Enki, you are king of the assembled people. You have only to open your mouth for everything to multiply and for plenty to be established. Enlil, the great mountain, has commissioned you to gladden the hearts of lords and rulers, wish them well. Enki, lord of prosperity, lord of wisdom, beloved of On, ornament of Eridug, who establishes commands and decisions, who well understands the decreeing of fates, you close up the days and make the months enter their houses. So Enki is Saturn after the split, after the change, because now time is existing. So Enki cannot be the dwarf star, cannot be Shamash. Enki must be Saturn. It establishes very clearly that the time in which we were with Saturn as our pole god, and this is where Talbot's work starts to take profundity, that's when time began. On was not merely the corona around it. It's not just a mere Aten that is going around it. It was a whole different star. Okay, next slide.
I got one question about Enlil, the great mountain.
Space bar yet?
No, I was going to ask you about Enlil, the great mountain, before I did. And that is, what is the great mountain?
That this text does not answer. Well, hold on one second. Make sure that we're on. I want to. There might not be any background noise.
Oh, okay. That's cool. Yeah. All right. Action.
Okay.
It says Enlil, the great mountain, but what exactly is the great mountain?
You know, it's not clear. So we're still not exactly 100% clear what the step pyramid mountain thing is about yet. But I am going to go out on a limb and hypothesize that the Triforce image that is in our minds of the three triangles, the three pyramids that form a bigger one, that it is actually a shape that is formed by Saturn, Jupiter, and Neptune. And then this triangle at the center of which, or the peak of which, is actually Jupiter. So as much as the discourses of an alien sky blew our mind, because seeing this giant gas giant above us, now imagine looking up and seeing all three, and you're closest, of course, to the God that that we see, but the one where the massive plasma is going off and towering up to is Jupiter, not Saturn. But Saturn is, it says, the king of the assembled people.
Yes.
So this is fascinating, because it throws on its head a lot of the things that we've made an assumption about in the electric universe community.
Such as?
Well, we assumed that the step ladder to heaven, the step pyramid, was a purely Venus-related incident, because a lot of the step pyramids seem to date from that period. But if you recall, the oldest pyramids in the world, the biggest ones, are not step pyramids. They're all typified by, like, the Great Pyramid, like the ones in Bosnia and the Gunung Padang. These hills are shaped to reflect a real, like, mountain shape. And there was something reaching up towards Jupiter, but where it's reaching up from is not clear yet. It could be coming from some unseen field. Maybe it's a current sheet or some kind of plasma activity. It's not exactly clear.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the Pyramid Nebula?
Actually, I believe it's called the Red Square Nebula. It's about 5,500 light years from Earth, and it's got the familiar hourglass shape to be a double layer. Pretty much the same thing supernova 1987A has. We're just looking at it from a different point of view, probably a side view instead of right down the barrel.
It looks just like a step pyramid.
I would like to see that, actually.
Oh, I have it, of course. It would take me a while to find it, but I can. Yeah, I'll show it to you. I'll send it to you.
All right, so here's where we get to the interesting part. Enki cannot be a biological being. This paragraph makes it clear. Enki, king of the Absu. So now we know the Absu is a region of the sky, not a place in Turkey or Iran. Okay? Justly praises himself in his majesty. My father, king of heaven and earth, made me famous in heaven and earth. My elder brother, king of all the lands, gathered up all the divine powers and placed them in my hand. I brought the arts and crafts from the Ikur, the house of Enlil, to my Absu in Eridug. So Eridug must also be a region of the sky. I am the good seaman begotten by a wild bull. I am the firstborn of On. So you cannot be, this is a biological fact, you cannot be the firstborn and the younger brother.
Right. Yeah. No, you can't.
Right there. That's the end of that.
Just,
I'm sorry.
How does it make it the end? Just so in case someone isn't getting it.
Okay. Well, I don't know how to explain it better to people, but if you're the firstborn, then you would not have an elder brother.
Right. My mama is my sister.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
he says, I'm the firstborn, not the firstborn son. I am the firstborn of On.
Yeah.
Meaning,
Right.
star split.
I get it.
Jupiter ejected, Enlil ejected, but it was the greater part. So instead of saying my elder brother, the better translation is probably my senior brother or my superior brother.
Wait a
My
minute.
superior brother, king of all the lands.
You said he ejected. Did he crash? Did he eject?
No.
Oh.
No.
And come
No,
down
if
in
it
a
crashed,
pod? Oh.
if it crashed,
Yeah.
okay, we'd all be Jupiter on the core of Jupiter, just flat. When the star split, the larger portion ejected away and it appeared to us that Saturn was the firstborn of this splitting and the first to congeal, and it was at our pole. It says, I am a great storm rising over the great earth. I am the great lord of the land, principal among all the rulers, father of the foreign lands, big brother of the gods. It says right there that Enlil's the elder brother, but he's the big brother of the gods. Bring prosperity, perfection, seal keeper of heaven and earth. I am the wisdom and understanding of the foreign lands, on king, on his dais, overseeing justice, with Enlil looking out over the lands. So there you go. So you could see Jupiter at the same time as Saturn. I decree good destinies. He has placed in my hands. So somehow the people understood that Jupiter had the greater of the power, and then had given over some of that power to Enki. He has placed in my hands the decreeing face of the fates in the place where the sun rises. I am cherished. I am named with the good name, leader of the gods. I was born as the firstborn son of Holy On. Right? So you can't be the firstborn and be the younger brother. So we're not talking about people here. We're talking about something up in the sky and an event that the status of who is the older and who is the greater is determined by size and by primacy as to what people see in the sky and power level, which makes total sense. So if you go to the next slide, we have a picture. This is brilliant stuff, fresh news. I'm sure most people on here have seen right out of Colombia. This is the best one. So this is a classic cosmic egg that I've seen in my research hundreds of times here. You can see at the walls in Durham. You can see it in Baconi and Maputo. You can see it in Sardinia.
Okay.
The first thing that people should notice is on the top, the hatching portion. That bump is repeated at Göbekli Tepe in enclosure D, the physical shape of the enclosure. Number two, the right side in my work, I identify that as the flat butt. And then on the bottom, that it goes flat as well, which means that the people who recorded this at the splitting period recorded it at a time when we were on the other side of the star. Then the people who made the earthworks and the stoneworks and places like Göbekli Tepe, where they must have made the enclosures and the earthworks at the beginning of the process, seeing that something was about to happen when we were on the other side, on the first side. It's as if it's been flipped, but this is not a flipped image. This is the photograph from the reports. Okay, and then off the left, you see that the star is ejecting material, and then a streamer goes down to the right of it and forms Jupiter. You can see that it's forming. That is a secondary recording of the event. Yes, it looks like a giant beaver or a panther or it's been recorded as a boar, all these things, but primarily it is an ejection event.
I just wanted to say one thing. On the egg, on the right-hand side, if you turn that upside down, that would look just like those squiggly lines you get with a nuclear explosion. Did you ever notice that? You get these squiggly little electric lines like Kirkland currents.
When it flared, they probably did see a lot of things. And I would say that what we're seeing on the other side is the original star's anode tufts.
You see, now you're getting me with the original stars, but before I jump on you, I want to hear the whole thing because, of course, I have 100 questions just from that alone, but just proceed. Let's just keep going.
The original star is pictured in the Egyptian Ramses Saleh as a very nice egg, a very round egg.
Well, it had to go somewhere. It didn't disappear.
No, it didn't disappear. You can see it here. This is the world's only that I have ever found painted version, because everything else has been rock art or carving or stones piled up or, enclosures. This is the only one I've seen where the process has been painted, and the split that actually happened when the one became the two, where on literally birds, Enlil and Enki. This is the only thing I've seen like it. Now, what they're showing there on the left is when the star continued the process, it began to form the first gas giant of Enlil, or of the planet Jupiter, but it was still flaring. So eventually, when it calms down, it becomes Saturn. So the flare, so it's not like Eduardo Cardona is wrong. It was the flare god, but Saturn is only the remnant gases from that event.
Okay.
Because it continued ejecting more material. And I maintain that it probably did so because the sun was approaching it. And the sun would have, at that point, probably only been a bright dot in the sky and not considered much more than one of the angels of the heaven. But Apollo had not arrived yet. But as long as it's approaching, the bright light of the crescent would start to appear, and the star would start to behave more energetically, which would make it even more brilliant than it had been in the past.
I see. You're taking more of a Solaria Benaria kind of approach. I get it.
I don't know, but what I'm taking.
Well, he had a star, and he called it Super Uranus. That's what he called it, and all the other planets came out of it. I didn't know if you were aware of that.
No, I mean, but that's the thing is, it's not the planet Uranus.
No. That was what it was called. It was called Super Uranus or Super Saturn, one of the two.
Okay.
And then all the other ones broke out of it. It at one time was a star, but it got broke up into all the other planets.
Well, kudos to him, because my research is independent of that. My research has been based solely off of the search and looking at these cosmic eggs and measuring their ratio diameters.
Right.
And this egg, what I'm telling you, is these features on this egg. Remember that this site has only been announced in the last few weeks. Right. And this shape that you see is exactly the shape that is found in the Nazca kind of things. It's found in Egypt. It's found in Africa. Both in South Africa and in Zimbabwe, I think, or it might be Mozambique. It's found on art in China and in India. And what is different is here it is showing the bifurcation. So now we are seeing the answer to the riddle. Did the gas giants accrete? No, they did not accrete. They were ejected. Why they ejected, we don't know. I would maintain that what we're seeing is the core of what became Jupiter is being pulled out. But it's possible that the sun in approach, not only did it cause the Shamash to lose its photosphere and us to lose Zeptepi and the purple sky, but that it actually caused some electrical behavior inside of it that led to a bipolar effect, somewhat like what we see with the comets and the way that they get etched into bipolar shapes. And some of the planetoids in the Neptunian belt also get that bipolar shape. And this ejection was either a force from the outside or from the inside.
I see. Yeah.
So this is the interesting thing. Now, this site, of course, is not to do with Enki and the world order. I'm just showing
What kind of
you be the eldest son and have an older brother. Well, the older brother is the larger one. So I don't think it's older at all. I think rather, unless it's older because it formed into a gas giant first and Saturn came later because it had to keep losing its material. And then that would make Enlil the older brother. But being the firstborn means literally what became Saturn was the remnants of On. So you're seeing on splitting up here. All right. So I think I've beaten that point in enough.
I get it. Yeah, I get it. You're saying this must have been a red dwarf or a smaller star than the sun, right? Or one equal to the sun, or
Much smaller. Yes, much smaller.
So the sun
Much.
basically swiped its Berkeley current and it went all haywire and freaked out and had a bunch of babies.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah, that was cool. Okay.
Next.
Yeah. All right. I'm with you.
So he is really, really great. So the next one's talk about Enki, and I mean, just gushing in a state of high delight, which I assume is an energetic state. King of the Abzu again justly praises himself in his majesty. I am the Lord. I am the one whose word is reliable. I am the one who excels in everything. At my command, sheepfolds built, cow pens, etc. When I approach Earth, there is a high carp flood. So the idea of bringing some kind of tidal resolution that people could feel the approach as the Earth orbited nearer to Saturn. When I approached the Green Meadows, stockpile stacks accumulated, again, just energy, right? Just more UV rays.
Mm-hmm.
I built my house, shrine, pure place, built my Abzu, shrine, decreed a good fate. The lords to me, I'm Enki, they stand before me praising me. So this concept of the angel singing before the Lord, there must have been actual sounds and groans and trumpets, things in the sky. We have these trumpet sounds actually happen still on the earth, and they're atmospheric. It must have been more common at the time for these energetic interactions to cause trumpeting sounds and to sound like anytime these bodies were approaching Saturn, that the atmosphere, that there was a singing noise or a groaning noise, trumpeting noise. It still happen on this planet to this day.
It's the very reason instruments were created in the first place.
It probably was. It's probably exactly the reason. So the priests stand before me in distant days, the income and ninkum officiants organize. I would assume those are different sizes of moons. The large ones are probably the income, and the smaller ones are probably the ninkum, but I don't know for sure. They purify the river, the interior shrine for me. So the river must be a plasma path of some sort. In my Abzu, sacred songs, incantations resound. So now we know definitely the religion started here. The stag of Abzu transport me where it's most delightful. Glide swiftly for me through the great marshes. So the great marshes probably are referring to some kind of plasma material up in the sky. Obedient. And then it speaks of a captain of the barge, holds the golden scepter for me. I am Enki, and he is in charge of my boat. I am the Lord. I will travel. I am Enki. I go forth in the land, the Lord who determines the fates. So this is interesting because we have heard that the Saturn was stationary. And now I'm going to reveal my thought on this. And I talked with this with Rick, and I explained when this split would have happened, it would have created first a two-body and then a three-body problem with Neptune. When you have a three-body problem, you can have mutual orbit in the shape of the triquetra. When things are moving, it can't do it forever, but it can do it for a time. If we're strongly in the pull of Saturn, two things. First, we can be moving relative to Saturn, and it can look like it's stationary and yet also moving swiftly. Secondly, when it accelerates through turns or going between, it may appear to speed up or slow down relative to our motion and the conservation of angular momentum with it. And when that happens, we may pass too close, and that may cause an induction and lead to a thunderbolt. When we get far away, it may cause things to grow less strongly because there's less energy in the environment. But still continuously see a wavering Enki in the main portion of the sky as we're pulled along behind it. That is my conclusion here, is what it's saying.
And you're saying that Enki is indeed Saturn, right?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. All right.
Yeah. Well, that's
So
interesting
next,
because he's also known as the god of seeds too, in other civilizations.
well, I would imagine that civilization form.
So have you ever heard of that? The wailing for Tammuz? Same thing.
I have heard. I
Yeah.
don't know it, but
Yeah.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
And the god for the Egyptians, the green god. Come on, you know his name? It is, oh well, move on.
There's
Moving on.
different texts.
That, yeah, the god that's green.
Osiris.
Oh,
He's the green lord.
yes. Osiris, yes.
Yeah.
According to
Yeah. It's in
Velikovsky,
the Butts
Osiris, yeah,
translation.
is Saturn.
And he is the Lord of Diadems, and that's going to come up here in a little bit as
Oh,
well.
good. Okay, good.
But if your catastrophes cause people to form civilizations and work together, then you are essentially seeding things, without even just being the fertility god. It could have been just a necessity to survive.
It
All right. So
induces a
next,
lot of questions, but we'll just keep going so you can get through the presentation and then we can expand.
all right. So the Eridug is the egg, and the staircase is the step pyramids or ziggurats.
The Eridug is the egg. Okay.
Yes, no city. Those have no houses to the Martu nomad. So there, we were just talking about that, right? People wandering about, learning how to survive,
Right.
who are nomads. The Anuna gods address affectionately the great prince who has traveled in his land, not in the land, in his land. Lord who rides upon the great powers, the pure powers, who controls the great powers, the numberless powers. So the different forms of electricity and plasma in display in the sky. Foremost in all the breadth of heaven and earth, who received the supreme powers in Eridug. So this would be some kind of charging up event above. The holy place, the most esteemed place, Enki, Lord of Heaven, praise. All the lords and rulers, incantation princes of Eridug, linen-clad priests of Sumer performed purification rites of the Abzu, for the great prince who has traveled in his land. For Father Enki, they stand guard in the holy place, the most esteemed place, the chambers, the emplacements. They purify the great shine of the Abzu. They bring there the tall juniper and the plant to, so this is their worship for the Saturnian Lord here. And the great music room of Enki, skillfully they build the main staircase of Eridug on the good quay. They prepare the sacred Uzga's shrine, where they utter endless prayers. So this reminds me of the Hindus who continued, well, they were really Brahmins. And so we're speaking here of Brahma, the time when they would speak in endless cantations and re-utterings of the Vedas.
Mm-hmm.
And the staircase of Eridug. So now Eridug is some form of step ladder type shape in the sky, probably plasma Z pinching. Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next.
Okay.
Maybe this time Neptune is first mentioned. The tree is also revealed to be the same as the cosmic pole. So this Christmas tree is associated with Christmas time, associated with Saturnalia for a reason. The Lord, and that's funny, my wife just brought home a Christmas tree, a real one. The Lord, the great ruler of the Abzu, issues instructions on board the stag of the Abzu, the great emblem erected in the Abzu, its shade extending over the whole land. All right, no tree is that large, right?
Yeah.
So we must be talking
right.
about something incredible for its shade to be everywhere. Refreshing the people, the principal foundation, the pole planted in the marsh, rising high over all the foreign lands, noble captain of the lands, the son of Enlil holds in his hand the sacred punt pole, a mess tree ornamented in the Abzu, which received the supreme powers in Eridug, the holy place. The hero proudly lifts his head towards the Abzu. This may be our first instance, even before the Croesus, or at least around the same time as in Egypt, the concept of a warrior messiah associated with a tree, and of course with religion. Very fascinating. Circe, the boatman of the barge, boat for the Lord. Then Niger Sig, I assume I'm butchering that. The captain of the barge holds the holy scepter for the Lord. 50 Bahama deities of the subterranean waters speak affectionately to him. I would, again, assume those are minor beings. Maybe they are comets or asteroids. The stroke callers, the heavenly gom birds, which reminds me of the so-called, what people say are spacecraft out of the Hindu texts, and also of the Native American.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Right.
interesting that it's better not to translate that, because what in the world would you say is a gom anyways? It is probably a shape formed which instigated some of the therianthropic art around the world. So is this Neptune? Did Jupiter, because in the enclosure without paint, which I'm sure that the original T Soleils and Gobekli Tepe were probably all painted. But now we can't see the paint. All we can see in the Vulture stone is that a larger star has a beak extending, a bit of plasma, and then its wing is holding up another gas giant, and it looks a lot like the previous slide where the Colombians did it, the Amazonians, and they showed another gas giant coming off of it. So compare the Vulture stone with that image in the lower left, and you will see a lot of similarities. But it is not clear if what's being born there is Neptune or not. It might be Neptune, it might not be.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem with the fact that they use red, something like red ochre. You know, it's brilliant whatever they used, because that site in Colombia is 12,500 years old. I forgot to mention that. It's an 8-mile cliff face that's 12,500 years old. So it shows us that this event was what caused the Younger Dryas, and not an asteroid or comet crashing at Greenland. That was secondary.
That was
to the event.
I was just about to say that. Yep.
Okay, so what they were recording there at that 8 miles, and the reason there's so many animals, the animals are all on the lower part because they're recording the destructions in the sky and what wiped out the megafauna. Very fascinating. Okay, next one.
Yeah.
So there's the complex role of the stellar breakup, and it's clear again, these aren't people. Intrepid king, Father Enki in the land, prosperity maiden, a virgin in heaven and earth, the great prince who travels in the land. Enki decreed its fate. Sumer, great mountain. So now we know why Sumer is so named for that mountain, that trifold peak, the Bin. Land of heaven and earth, trailing glory, possibly some kind of, I suppose, plasma streaming behind after the event, you know. And if they were moving in a triquetra-like fashion, but it was chaotic a bit because of the three-body problem, it's possible. And there's a clip I can include to you that you can include for people, a certain portion. But that three-body problem is a serious problem. It causes a lot of chaos. That could make for a really long snake of the kind you see in Dragon Ball Z, or the dragon, this Chinese version of the dragon, which is really long and trailing and curling. Bestowing powers on from sunrise to sunset, your powers are superior powers, untouchable, and your heart is complex and inscrutable. So now what we see is, when Quetzalcoatl went down to the beach to die,
I'm feeling strong just reading that.
It's powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
They could see in it.
Yeah.
And it was inscrutable and complex. The motions were complex, and they couldn't calculate what was happening. But they could see portions of the star which they could not previously see. This is beautiful stuff. And just imagine animating this like heaven itself. Your good force, this first indication of a yin yang, your good creative force. And the question mark is not mine, that's the translators. They don't know how to translate this force. This force is Tao. This force is prana. This force is ruach. Your good creative force in which gods too can be born is beyond reach. So other material was ejecting from this heart, not just Venus. Other moons and planetoids and things were coming out, probably again because the sun was pulling on it. But the sun would be too far away at this point for them to know that that was the cause. Giving birth to kings who put on the good diadem. And again, the reference to a diadem, just like in the coffin text. Giving birth to lords who wear the crown on their heads. Your lord, the honored lord, sits with on the king on On's dais. Your king, great mountain, father Enlil, father of all the lands, has blocked you impenetrably like a cedar tree. So some type of energetic event, and it's really important that people see that the owl faces, which look like aliens when the Nazca did it, but they don't everywhere. These owl eye faces show that there's a stage after the separation, and now Enki is obviously surrounded by the remains of On's plasma sphere. There forms these double layers that are mutually opposed to each other and push against each other. And these owl eye motifs are worldwide, but some of the best ones I've seen are down in New Zealand. And the Anuna, the great gods, so this is, the Anunnaki, have taken up dwellings in your midst and consumed their food in your Gogunid shrines with their single trees. So individually, they all had their own shapes. Individually, they were all consuming plasma material, and that was their food. So his body became the individual little gods. Household Sumer, may your sheep folds be built, your cattle multiply, may your own Gaguna touch the skies, may your good temples reach the heaven. These are Ziggurats, obviously, and may the Anuna determine the destinies in your midst. So now the deed is done. Enki has become his own individual star, and the Anuna are now in control. The Earth is mixing it up with other moons they're of significant enough size that in our sky they would also be significant, maybe possibly more significant in size than our current moon is. I doubt it though, because if they had been too close, we probably would have captured some of them.
All right, time out.
Would have been more destructive.
Time out. Question time. Okay, it says Father Enlil, and you said he's the great mountain. Okay, so I take that as the polar configuration. Am I correct, or you're not? You're not.
No, this mountain again is a different shape. It's a different shape. The polar configuration that the so-called polar configuration here is actually us following along with Enki. So get rid of the collinear rotation idea. You don't need it. And in fact, it's an inhibition. Get rid of the idea of collinear rotation, which the people have been right. When it split,
what was the name of that? What was the name of that comet that hit Jupiter? Levy 9, Shoemaker Levy. Kind of like that. Following Saturn like that.
Well, not that closely, because we would have died.
No, I mean in that kind of a formation, like strung out, like beads.
No. Well, sort of, but remember that Shoemaker Levy 9 was one object that broke into many, so they couldn't help but go in the same direction. We and the other moons that had been around when it split, first the two opposed each other closely, and then started to pull away from each other. As they're pulling away from each other, becoming their own destinies. And then one of them even gets pulled again and creates Neptune. When that happens, we have to conserve angular momentum. And in conserving that, we're following in a rotation behind Saturn, but Saturn is also now moving at an accelerating speed, but it's accelerating as it accelerates through this 2-body, then 3-body problem. It's being pulled apart, and it can be seen through. and its inscrutable insides form congealations. Perhaps they are condensed matter, but perhaps they're rock. And those become new bodies, and the thing shrinks in its overall mass to its current size. And these bodies then are the children, the Anuna, and they feed on the plasma, which is their food in the Gaguna shrines, and they form their own little electrical trees, their own little electrical step pyramids. Okay, so the Great Pyramid, the three Great Pyramids, and the three little pyramids at the very end with the smallest pyramid now take a new meaning. Now we know why they built those. It wasn't because of the constellation Orion. They picked the constellation of Orion as a
Focal point.
I guess it's just a jumping off point in 11,000 years ago.
Yeah.
They built them because the three large ones are Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune. Neptune is the smallest. And at some point, whenever they conceived the desire to build those pyramids, we must have been part of the trailing behind and able to see the smaller trees or step pyramids being their moons trailing behind. And we're talking about pretty large moons, and it's going to get into them. And these must have been electrified.
Okay, that's cool.
At this point, we're now probably not 12,000 years ago anymore. We're probably 10,000 years ago. Okay, but we have been trailing behind as the three gods are racing around each other in a chaotic-like manner, leaving streams. We're being left behind, and it's cold out while that's happening.
I see. That was a
Once
cold period.
Once we catch up and start to be first around Saturn and then switch over to Jupiter, we are now inside of their irradiative zones where they can keep us warm again. But when we're tracing behind, we couldn't be.
Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah, we're in Saturn's shadow. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Okay, next slide.
Okay.
So the wobbling Lord of Plenty becomes a Lord of War. So Enki actually it's not Zeus who's the first Lord of War, it is Cronus, who ate his children, right? Then he proceeded to the sanctuary and decreed its fate. Then he proceeded to the land of Maluha, decreed its fate. So we see here that it's different regions, like we say, different houses of the zodiac, the constellations, the various constellations in the sky. Heroes shall, on the battlefield as weapons, may your bulls be great bulls and bulls of the mountains, silver be gold, copper 10 bronze, men go forth like bulls against their fellow men. War. We have war. He cleansed and purified the land of Dilmun. So something was wiped out. And Dilmun may very well have been some of these Harappan type civilizations that were in the Mesopotamian region, but it may be other places. We don't know. It could have also, when these high carp floods happened, perhaps the Caspian or Black Seas tipped over into the land, and that could be another way that they become purified. So it's unspecified here if they're thunderbolts or flood. He placed the Ninasakala in charge of it. So that's probably the original name for the moon, but we don't know. He gave for the fish the spawn, and they ate it, bestowed palms on the cultivated land, ate its dates. So here we're talking about the creation of agriculture. The king, endowed with strength by Enlil, destroyed their houses. So it's unclear if it means Enki is endowed with the strength of Jupiter here, or if it means a literal king. I think it's an actual king is what
the mountain moves, but it was probably
maybe
a body. It probably, like the mountain.
He brought their silver and lapis, their treasure, to Enlil, king of all the lands, in Nibiru. Now, this is interesting because it's possible that Nibiru is a place on Earth, but I'm going to take it that Nibiru may have actually been the planet that we now call Uranus, which is probably misnamed. It's probably Hades. That it may have been first time that this body approached the solar system.
Okay.
And see that from other evidence from other texts that we won't go, over right away. Okay, so the next slide.
Yeah.
Maybe plasma water flowed down when it was too near and low to the sky. After he had turned his gaze from there, Father Enki had lifted his eyes across the Euphrates, stood up full of lust like a rampant bull. This is very interesting. Lifted his penis, ejaculated, and filled the Tigris with flowing water. No person or alien can do that. You can't fill an entire river with flowing water. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is definitely reference to the Saturn. So this answers the question. This is Saturnian rings. We know the isotopes of the rings match the water here. So there must have been flood caused by Huangdi, this yellow lord. He was like a wild cow, etc. The Tigris, the side like the rampant bull. It brought a bridal gift, etc. It brought water, flowing water indeed, meaning that's way too much. Its wine will be sweet. So all this rain helps to grow the grapes. It brought barley, etc., that people will eat it. It filled the Ikur, the house of Enlil. So again, this is another place in the sky. So the plasma must have gone out here. Enlil was delighted with Enki, and Nibru was glad. The Lord put on the diadem, the rings, as a sign of lordship. He put on the good crown as a sign of kingship. So the good crown is the hexagonal crown that is carved into rocks, even here in Kentucky. Touching the ground on his left side, right there, boom, you know that it did not float only up at the pole. It had to move and wobble about as we were pulled by it. Plenty came forth out of the earth for him. So this material that we would touch on occasion had to be due for two things. Number one, as the planet moved, would accelerate through and slow down, just as comets do. When comets approach the sun, they accelerate. And when they whip around the sun, they go extremely fast. At that time, we would be pulled away, or it would seem as if we were away from the Lord. And then other times it would come near. Secondly, we are also orbiting this planet, which used to be a star. And on occasion, we may have brushed against the diadem, touching out what appeared to be our ground on his left side. So it would have been like a sunset, but not a sunset.
That's very interesting, Ramon. I want to ask you a question. Do you think it possible that two rocky core planets, like say the Earth and Mars, were electrically neutral or stable with one another, that they could actually touch, and it could be perhaps possible to jump from one to the other? Well, then again, if they were the same charge, they would repel each other, I suppose.
They would need to be electrically similar, though, but it's possible. When they went through these orbits, although they didn't get right on top of each other when they went through these orbits, because of some kind of charge repulsion, as has been described, still their moons could have possibly ran right into each other. It's quite possible. References, I don't assume that all references to the hammer have to do with shaking ground and the idea of a man, with a war hammer stamping the ground with it or with his foot. I think that they probably saw something smashed and it reminded them of a hammer smashing things. A stone hammer.
When you think like a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm going to steal that scorpion-infested cow pen. That's brilliant.
Right.
Who's the source here? This isn't some academic mainstreamer that's like poo-poo.
This is an academic translation. If you do a search, you could do a search for Enki in the World Order translation. It will be the top result, and it's not a new translation. Okay.
I always question sources. I always try to get three.
That's good. All right, next. Now, Neptune, Poseidon, son of Cronus, may have held sway here. So Enki, Lord of the Destinies, the King of the Absu, placed in charge all of this, him who holds the scepter in his right hand. So the servant right, or from earlier, who was serving him, is now placed in charge. At some point, we know that Poseidon was our Lord, or Shiva. All right, him who with the glorious
Shiva.
mouth submits to verification the devouring force of the Tigris and Euphrates. Ramayana. There's a great, monster that Rama and Lakshmana have to calm down. And I think that's the period he's talking about, is when Neptune was still putting forward all sorts of bolts from its early birth, while prosperity flows forth from the palace like oil. And then it's named as Enbelilu, the inspector of water, gave them the various species of carp, spoke to the reed beds, etc. He issued a challenge. Oh no, Enki placed in charge all of this, him from whose net no fish escapes, him from whose trap no living thing escapes, from whose bird net no bird escapes. So this thunderbolt god, who is briefly in the Ramayana, must have been one hell of a sight. This Neptunian, no wonder people feared Poseidon, the Lord of the ocean, because the legends that would have come down about this devouring force and this scepter in his right hand with the glorious mouth, which of course is probably the same blue spot that still exists, and which the winds are the highest in the entire solar system, probably was an incredible sight and absolutely terrifying. Would have definitely been a problem. So now the story moves forward.
Okay. Here's a little ironic twist. It's funny. The Romans copied their gods off the Greeks, but we name planets after Roman gods and not Greek gods.
Right.
Well,
there's some likelihood that the Romans had their own versions, but they lost a lot of the information, maybe a flood or something. So destruction is nigh. Is Venus the origin of the Sahara Desert? I'm going to say that probably it is. And the desert dunes are thickest over on that side of the world, and then the winds have moved them west to the Atlantic Ocean. So the Lord established a shrine, holy shrine, whose interior is elaborately constructed. So again, we see this concept that there is a shrine in the sky, a heart, and it is complex. He established a shrine in the sea, a holy shrine, whose interior is elaborately constructed, and whose interior is a tangled thread beyond understanding. So this is the intestines hanging in the tree. Okay. The shrine's placement is situated in the by the constellation.
Kind of sounds like Predator. Yeah, we're going.
So this is incredible. The shrine's emplacement is situated by the constellation called the field. Field, we use it modernly to describe electromagnetism. The Chinese use it to describe energy in the body.
Yes.
The word for the field, tian, is a homonym for heaven. The very shape in Chinese for field is the shape for mouth, but with a cross in it, or it can be drawn back to the hexagon itself. So this field is a universal language that's being shared here, this concept. The holy upper shrine's emplacement faces towards the Chariot constellation, obviously a different constellation. Terrifying awesomeness is a rising wave. Splendor is fearsome. The Anuna god,
that's a great line.
God dare not approach it. So it was repulsive. It would not allow them to be near it, even though they had been born out of it. So they did not come near the glory of the Lord. This is the glory, the original glory of the Lord. He filled the Ikur, the house of Enlil, with goods of all sorts. Enlil was delighted with Enki. Nibru was glad. Enki placed in charge of all this, of the wide extent of the sea. Her who sets sail in the holy shrine, who induces sexual intercourse, who over the enormous high flood of the subterranean waters, the terrifying waves, inundation of the sea, who comes forth from the mistress of Sarara. So is Sarara
Mm-hmm.
Venus and the origin of the word Sahara?
Mm-hmm.
This is something I'd like for people who are listening. Do me some research. I can't do it all.
It's interesting.
You go forth and you find out. It's possible it's another goddess who induces sexual intercourse. We are about to see of a different goddess here in a minute, but I am thinking that it's possible that the very first disaster that came through was actually 7,000 years ago. Venus swinging by was the first time we were terrorized, even before the biblical stuff.
Question: Who, when the god, Enki or either one is saying, "I am the great Enki" or "I am the great this or that," who is it that's actually speaking if he's not a being?
Well, somebody's writing it down,
I
but it's
see.
some kind of astronomer.
Right.
Some kind of Dogon-like shaman who
like a
lives,
scribe.
yeah. The Dogon were not the only ones that placed their high kings, priests, or astronomers up on a hill and then made them stay there. According to the Chinese, the Cahokians did the same thing here in America, but it was the chief who lived up on the mountain and did not come down, and the priests ran the town like the shogun. Pretty fascinating.
Yeah. Man, I just had a great question, but I forgot. Okay, we'll move on. It'll come back.
That's okay. That's all right.
Yeah.
Terrifying but productive. And who is Akur? So there's a link there for people if they ever get this. Don't click it, but because we're going to do the quotes from the site itself.
Okay.
This is an interesting thing. Who is Akur? He called to the rain of the heavens. This is Enki still. He is the floating clouds made rising the horizon. He turned the mounds into fields. So that's a problem. If you turn whole hills into flat fields, probably a flood. Enki placed in charge of this, him who rides on the great storms, who attacks with lightning bolts, the holy bar, who blocks the entrance, the interior of heaven, the son of On, the canal inspector of heaven, Akur, the bringer of plenty, son of On. So maybe Akur is a changing name from originally the incillable, the previous name for Neptune. If so, then it's gone through several incarnations. First as a holding the scepter, which may have been a plasma stream between Enlil and it, and then once it's all charged up and powerful, it becomes that terrifying force. And
I
now
want to know what
becomes the canal.
Enlil is, man. I know what Enki is, but I want to know what Enlil is.
Enlil is clearly Jupiter. Have no fears.
Okay.
Enlil is very clear.
There you go. I got you now. All right. Back on track.
He organized the plows, yokes, and teams. So we're now talking again in the 5,000s to 6,000s. The great prince Enki bestowed the horned oxen. He opened the holy furrows. He made the barley grow. Enki placed him in charge of them, the Lord who wears the diadem. So now no longer is Enki wearing the diadem. The ornament of the high plane, the high implements, the farmer of Enlil, Enkidu or Inkimdu, is in Gilgamesh, Enkidu.
Yeah.
Okay, responsible for the ditches, dikes. So we're now talking about a body which is the equal in size and power to Ares, to Mars, the planet Mars. The only body I can think of like that would be the planet Mercury. That's the only one I can think of, who is also known as a god of war in some ways. It reminds me of this, Tyr, who is Tuesday, right? Thor is Thursday, and Tyr is Tuesday. So this body must have been similar in size. It's possible it's in one of the other moons around, because I would think that we're about to enter into orbit around Jupiter if we haven't already at this point. Okay, so who is the farmer of Enlil? Possibly Mercury, who is possibly also known as Hermes, Thoth, the messenger of Zeus.
All this time, where's the sun?
Probably still out there. We're probably starting to, flank it. Apollo is a child who is growing. It's not really near to us at this point, but it's certainly getting brighter, and it's quite possible that we're freak age in which the myth, of I forget his name suddenly, flying up and trying to touch the sun and melting down. But here we're speaking of Enkidu and Gilgamesh, who of course is the Herculean hero.
Yeah.
They are similar strength. If you remember your Gilgamesh, they're similar strength.
Yeah.
Yes, he's supposed to be a giant. And so he is also a farmer, apparently, of Enlil. And this matches very well the idea of Hermes, Mercury, Thoth being the messenger of Jupiter. Pretty cool stuff. Next.
Is Thoth evil, or is he benevolent?
I think that whoever wrote the tablets of Thoth was certainly benevolent. Okay, so that link that we the who is Akur, it leads to this, and it's a separate text. Again, Swin, Enki, Inanna, Ninurta, Akur, Utu, Nuska, Nisaba, all the gods whosoever turn their attention to the city, cursed a god severely. City, you pounced on Akur. It is as if you had pounced on Enlil. A god, you pounced on Akur as if you had pounced on him. May your holy walls, the highest points, resound with mourning. May your Guguna be reduced to a pile of dust. So clearly, a god is one of the Anuna who have transgressed the orbit, and pounced on the Akur probably means disturbed the plasma shape, causing some kind of issue. But here we see Akur again. So we need to find out who Akur is exactly. It may be, again, just the planet Mercury, and they're all witnessing the, in this case, probably Hades, but we don't know exactly which god violating the sky. I just thought it was interesting to include. Next. So now do we have Titan or Ganymede showing up, or maybe Callisto? The Lord culled the cultivated fields and bestowed on them mottled barley. Enki made the chickpeas. He heaped up piles of the earth. Enki multiplied the stockpiles and stacks, and with Enlil's help...
Back. You broke up there.
Can you hear me?
Up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Now I can, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, go
So
ahead.
Enki multiplied the stockpiles and stacks, and with Enlil's help, he enhanced the people's prosperity. Enki placed in charge of all of this her whose head and body are dappled, whose face is covered in syrup, the mistress who causes sexual intercourse, the power of the land, the life of the black-headed Akmen, the good bread of the whole world. So now, this is a conundrum, because we thought maybe that the sexual goddess, or what in Mayan they call the black god, was Venus, but it cannot be, because we now know that Velikovsky was wrong about few things, but about this thing. There are no hydrocarbons in the atmosphere of Venus. It is a different body that we have not explored that has those hydrocarbons. And I'm going to go for time, but it could have been another body. The great prince.
Venus is loaded with hydrocarbons. It dropped all kinds of naphtha on the earth. Now, you remember that, according to Velikovsky.
When we probed it, we didn't find the hydrocarbons.
Really?
Now, I'm not saying it can't be.
Isn't that what's
that we
covering?
can't
Okay.
No, that was Velikovsky's idea, but that wasn't something that we have yet found that I'm aware of.
But it's still possible. Okay. All right.
Of course, it's possible.
Yeah.
And there's certainly organic constituents. They have been found, but I maintain that those were stolen from Mars. From
Venus
Mars's atmosphere.
doesn't even have any dirt.
I don't know. I've never been.
It's just rock. Yeah. Well, from what I've seen.
I don't think. Yeah, it probably doesn't have soil, because soil is a living biome. It's a living entity.
Yeah.
One day. The great prince fixed a string to the hoe, organized the brick molds. He penetrated it like precious oil. Enki placed in charge of them him whose sharp-bladed hoe is a corpse-devouring snake. Mold it, tidy stack of hurled grain in the ewes. Kola, who bricks in the land. Okay, so here we have a couple of gods, and the only way that's possible is if we were close enough to see these bodies before the age of the telescope.
Mm-hmm.
And now the sharp-bladed foe might just be reference to a plasma shape. The corpse-devouring snake might be another plasma shape. But I assume that this black-headed may be Callisto. It's possible. So on the next slide, there are some
Well, I
pictures
just wanted
here.
to,
And people,
before we switch the page, I'd like to have a little time to make a little bit of a no, it's heavy. It's
yeah,
really the lyric. It's got good lines.
it's intense.
Yeah, it is.
Maybe the most intense and favorite of the ancient texts that I've come across so far. I'm a big fan of the Enuma Elish. I do enjoy the Gilgamesh. But this is a very intense primary source. So now you look at these, moons of Jupiter, and then you look at Titan down below. I think that Titan looks to me like a dapple-faced goddess whose face looks like syrup. If you look at the two different ways of looking at Titan, but it's also possible for it to be one of those others up top. I'm not the ultimate judge, but somebody's a black-haired or black-faced god, Acnan, and someone is a goddess. And there's missing lines in the text, so it may be talking about two different gods and goddesses. But we're talking about the Anuna here, the giant spheres for which they have made in Costa Rica, these giant spheres. These are the Anunnaki, and one of them is the one who induces sexual behaviors, and the other one is the syrup colored face, or maybe it's the same one. I mean, you decide, but definitely they could see it, and that's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It's total support of the concept of the Greek goddesses and demigods, and of the various gods in the Vedas. I just think it's absolutely marvelous. This text just keeps giving. And it's got more.
Yeah. I was just watching my new intro. I wanted to make a short one. Okay, we're back on the clock. Now you're saying that the syrup-faced goddess.
Hold on, let me get my mouth just a second.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because nobody ever really thinks about what the moons were doing at this time. And I'm sure that, they didn't probably have how many they have today, but they probably had a good number of them, I would think. At least the four major ones.
Well, undoubtedly they made some sense these days, but I'd say that they did their majority of the formations when the giant star was opened up and some of its material spilled out.
Yeah.
All right. Next slide.
Okay.
They could see and sense the electrogravitic power. This is where it gets good. He tied down the strings and coordinated them with the foundations. With the power of the assembly, he planned a house, performed the purification rituals. The great prince put down the foundation and laid the bricks. Enki placed in charge all of this, whose foundations once laid do not sag, whose good houses once built do not collapse, whose vaults reach up to the heart of the heavens like a rainbow, Mukdama, Enlil's master builder. So Enki placed in charge Enlil's master builder. What a fascinating relationship these two brother planets have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Each places in charge. So Saturn is coordinating and placing in charge, but they all belong to Enlil. So this tells me that Saturn had taken one of the moons, that there may have been more so-called Galilean moons beforehand, right?
Yeah.
And
Has Enlil whacked his pee-pee yet?
Well, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
What shape?
we don't know at that point.
Says he tied down the strings. So some kind of plasma, electric, something was reaching. He raised a holy crown over the upland plain, again with the crowns, possibly another thunderbolt in the shape of the Paratian thunderbolt here now. The crown that you see the Queen wearing in the Black Panther movie, that you see in the Aboriginal art. this sweeping crown. I think that may have been the crown that actually came down the upland plain, fastened a lapis beard to the high plane. He made it wear a lapis headdress. He made the good perfect place with grasses and herbs, etc. So this, we're talking about the Eden here. He multiplied the animals of the high plane. He multiplied the ibex and the goats and made them copulate. Enki placed in charge of them the hero who is the crown of the high plane, who is the king of the countryside, the great lion of the high plane, the muscular, hefty, burly strength of Enlil, Kakan, the king of the hills. So this is probably a reference to one of the largest of the moons.
Okay,
But
question.
Yeah.
At this point, is Saturn got its rings?
Well, you know, it
Because
had its rings early.
there's another ancient text that, just want to let me finish this thought. There's another ancient text that said he put Saturn, bound Saturn in chains, and then himself was subdued.
Right.
So that's got something to do with bitters, fighting.
Where the Greeks saw them as chains, this text earlier saw them as a diadem. But then if you remember, a couple of slides later, he placed the diadem on another body, Enkidu. And so Enkidu then had the rings. And so I would assume that Saturn still had its rings, but it may not have been any more considered a diadem, especially, obviously, according to the Babylonians, who
Those
lent
are
their knowledge
expulsion
to
rings.
Greeks.
That Saturn had to have had an event, because those are expulsion rings, and where we get most of our saltwater oceans from.
Well, yeah, we've already we covered that. That was earlier. But here, what we're
Okay, we've already
concerned
had
with
the event. Okay, that's
right.
One
Who is
catastrophe. I get it.
Well, I think we've had a few, because
Mhm.
he raised the high carp floods, and then there was some thunderbolt stuff, and then there was a terrifying heart revealed in the intestines or strings in the sky, in the tree, and then there was mounds made flat, and so I think another giant flood. And so I think the first one was tidal, and then the second one. So the first one was tidal and purifications of tsunamis, and the second one was the inundating waters, and were references to the rings when we would touch when it looked like Saturn touched its left side down to our ground, and then those created massive floods, and those massive floods wiped out the mounds that made the hills flat.
And it's just so much. It's crazy.
I know.
Yeah.
We don't know here who the great lion of the high plane is, the muscular, the hefty. It very well could be that Kakan, king of the hills, is Mars. We don't know exactly here.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, the K was aggressive words, in the early language, according to Michael Tesseri. Yeah. Karen even come from it. There's a whole thing. It was a K with a circle. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. I don't want to distract you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So order from chaos. Jupiter steals some moons, which probably forms its retrograde system. And Heracles definitely appears, and is he losing water? He filled the Ikur, the house of Enlil, with possessions. Enlil was delighted with Enki, and Nibru was glad. He demarcated the border. So people need to get rid of this idea that Nibru is an alien planet. This text makes it clear Nibru was definitely not an alien planet. It may have been a foreign body. It may have been a foreign body. It may be the planet Uranus, but it is not aliens on a black planet. Those are two different things. The black god is its own thing. So that's good news. We don't have to. That's not something we have to worry about anymore. At least right now. There's a black planet approaching us, but it would be a foreign to our solar system.
I just have one question.
Go ahead.
If it was, I know. If it wasn't the Anunnaki, then who spliced our second molecule of our DNA?
Now that would be a good question, and
Somebody did.
unfortunately, this text does not give any answers for that.
I know.
But it could be radiation. That's what Rick tends to think, is that the radiation of these events cause drastic changes. It could be visitors of a different kind and completely who are not humanoids or not at all, looking like us. But they weren't 20-foot giants who had inexplicable sexual relations with 4-foot Homo erectus.
Right. But it just seems mankind has just got off on the wrong foot, and it's just never been able to get it together. We just can't get it together. Hate rules the world.
When we first became modern humans, I think we were doing all right. But after we saw what the gods did, we got into some crazy stuff, and we haven't stopped.
I know.
He demarcated the borders and fixed the boundaries. So these are again orbits for the Anuna gods. Enki situated dwellings in cities and disposed agricultural lands in the fields. Enki placed in charge the whole of heaven and earth. The hero, the bull, of course this is Gilgamesh, who comes out of the Hakur forest, bellowing truculently. The youth Utu, the bull. So this is probably the actual Mars rather than the last one. The bull standing triumphantly, audaciously, majestically, father of the great city, the great herald of the east city of Holion, the judge who searches out verdicts for the gods with a lapis lazuli beard. Whoa!
Yeah.
Why does it have a blue beard rising from the horizon into the holy heavens, Utu, the son born by Ningal? Now, remember that Venus is bigger.
Right.
And when they approached each other and exchanged material, some thought of it as that it looked like, Mars was nourishing off of its mother. I maintain that probably the water and atmosphere of Mars was almost totally stripped away by Venus. And that is where these compounds related to life are now. We do know that some of the features on Mars are fluvial, not all, and certainly not the Valles Marineris, but some of them are. And so these fluvial oceans, where are they? Where are they? So rising from the horizon into the holy heavens. Very fascinating. Just absolutely. What a stupendous sight it would be to see Mars losing. Maybe we came. Here's your maybe your answer. Maybe we are ancient. Maybe we're the aliens, and maybe we came here. And it says in the Enuma Elish that there was some kind of, it was lucky that there were these beings who. This is all Sitchin, of course, to breed with. Well, here's the question: at the time of the splitting of the head of Tiamat, why would you come and leave some apes behind? Is it possible that we originally were from Mars, or our civilization, our modern civilized, where we don't fit in with nature and all that?
Yeah.
And that we had to flee Mars, and that's where our obsession with destroying our own planet comes from, because we blame ourselves all the time for everything. That came here, or maybe the people were on both planets. I have no idea. I can't answer that. All I can say is
I feel a direct connection between Mars and Egypt for sure, and maybe Atlantis. That's kind of looks like a little pyramid there, for me. And and oh man, there was another thing too. I was looking at this and it came to my mind, and I'm like, then I started, truculently. I've never seen that word used like that. That's excellent. That's excellent.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Excellent writing.
Fantastic.
Excellent. I mean, told by a master scribe. If this
Really,
is the language of then.
What is that?
Oh, my amp. Oh, I didn't know it was on. Okay. Sorry. Okay.
Next slide.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, man. It really is. Yeah, keep going.
So Venus is no moon. Is she a space station? Of course, that's a joke from Star Wars. Because Venus is the Death Star, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Then alone, lacking any functions, the great woman of heaven, Inanna, lacking any functions, so again, no orbit, came to see her father Enki in his house. So we know that definitely Venus did come out of Saturn, so the Mayans are correct, the Greeks are wrong. So the priest who told Solon, you Greeks know nothing, you've forgotten everything because of the flood, he was right. The Greeks don't know anything. I mean, what they memorized has been useful, but it's also been confusing. It has confused us and caused us to lose the true way of remembering what happened. Weeping to him, making her complaint to him. There's a whole list of complaints. I bypass a large number. Enlil, lifted in your hands to confirm the functions of the Inanna, the great gods. Why did you treat me, the woman, in an exceptional manner? Before we have anybody in here that's super feminist, she goes on to list, just tons of other female goddesses. So this reference to her as the woman must be to say that she's the top goddess of the group and not the only goddess.
Yeah.
I am holy Inanna. Where are my functions? And then she lists a huge list of things that go to the other goddesses, her sisters. And then she says, but why did you treat me, the woman, in an exceptional manner? I am holy Inanna. Where are my functions? And so Enki answers, how have I disparaged you, goddess? How have I disparaged you? How can I enhance you? Because she's so glorious. I made you go forth. I covered in something, probably the earth or the sky, with the garment. I made you exchange its right side and its left side. Whoa, did Venus cause the sunset to change direction? Wow.
Yeah, I just say get over yourself, Inanna. Jeez. What a bee.
Well, but the point here is,
Yeah,
of
just come
course,
here so I can suck every bit of life out of you. Oh, sorry.
when the Earth rolled over, it was obviously really due to electric field changes from the dominance of Jupiter to the dominance of the Sun.
Right.
But they don't know that. So when they saw it and Venus comes near, it may have appeared to them that Venus actually physically pulled the Earth over.
So Earth
was
with Saturn, then Jupiter, then the Sun. So she's kind of like a pass around Patty. Seems like everybody had a go.
It was on or Shamash, the star.
It's a wonder she's alive.
Saturn. Huh?
It's a wonder the Earth is alive.
Well, yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
After all it's been through.
It was the star. Then it was Saturn, and we were chasing after Saturn. Then it was Poseidon or Neptune, the planet, for very briefly. Then it was Jupiter. Then possibly Venus here, briefly as the Lord, causing all sorts of worship of death in the world. And heart sacrifice, and then the sun was dominant in the sky.
Yeah, so swipe. Yeah. Damn, just think of that. Just think of all that turmoil that Earth has been through, and she still has birds singing and flowers growing. I mean,
I know.
How much longer do you think the Earth is really gonna stay like it is?
I mean,
With
photosynthesis like 20 to 30% efficient, but it's still pretty efficient. At this point, without humans, this planet was going to run out of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So there would have been a huge catastrophe without humans. There would definitely be a plant extinction event sometime in the future, probably in a few million years, because the plants, even though the lowered efficiency, we're going to use up all the carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
Okay. There's
some
way
people
too much.
say that we're in an extinction event now. I just recently saw a movie and it induced me to do a lot of thinking. And I have a couple, but I want to wait till we're done with this, and then I want to ask you a few questions that I have for your opinion.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So proceed. Are we done?
Yes.
We're done.
No, there's so many. A couple more.
Well, let's finish. Yeah, by all means, let's finish. Go ahead.
So another joke. Well, you have to hit the slide.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Just a lot of thoughts. You know, it's just stimulating a lot of thoughts with me. So bear with me.
So a little 21st century joke here. Anana, the first Karen. And
Karen, there it is. Yeah.
Here she
Okay.
goes forward. She says, she lists, here's the list of them. My sister, this, my sister did this, my sister did this, and then she's complaining. It's just a funny joke. But
Guys, don't marry a
no
girl
function.
named Karen. Okay,
Yeah, she's clearly not speaking of biological sisters, right? Here we're talking about orbits, orbits, right?
Gotcha.
Orbital period. And this orbital periods must have helped to plan out things. When things should be born, when things should be planted, when you should have certain events, when the god's meal is to be. How interesting is that? So there must have been a place in the sky where plasma was still situated, and maybe that's where the mana was, right? Something that came from the heart of the star, and then they consumed it, and they would pass through it on an orbit.
Oh, yes,
So-
yes. Go ahead.
No, that's the whole thing here.
Mhm.
There's every one of them are in an orbit, and those orbits were seen as going through specific regions, and they determined, and that's where the concept of organized religion really got its start. Before the religious period, back in those early days of Sumer and Babylon, the people saw the regularity, but Venus was not regular. So this supports the idea of the Cometary Venus, which of course is not my idea. And there have been many who have said that the Venus was a comet, and we have found the plasma tail, but now we are seeing a text that validates that Venus was not happy with this, and that may have been the way people came to blame Venus the Karen, turning into the Medusa and destroying everything because she's not happy.
Yeah.
It's then blamed on the goddess.
She smote his nether breast. The Iliad.
Right.
Venus and Mars. Yeah.
Sounds like a Karen to me.
Or
Final slide.
Yeah, I like the one. She smote his neck, which turns out to be Olympus Mons. All right, let's see next one for electrical machining. Venus dominates the Iker, Athena, goddess of war.
We're at the end of the text.
Oh.
Maiden Anon, how have I disparaged you? How can I enhance you? Among the ominous occurrences of the hurly-burly of battle, I shall make you speak vivifying words. So this is the idea of Athena aiding the warriors by whispering to them. In its midst, although you're not an Arabu bird of ill omen, I shall make you speak ill-omened words. I made you tangle straight threads. Nana, I made you straighten out the tangled threads. I made you the color tufted with colored threads. So here we're talking about the insides of the stringy stuff becoming Venus. Inanna, you heap up human heads like piles of dust. You sow heads like seed. Inanna, you destroy what should not be destroyed. You create what should not be created. You remove the cover from the drum of lamentations. Inanna, while shutting up the Te and the Dab instruments in their homes, you never grow weary with admirers looking at you. Inanna, you know nothing of tying the ropes on deep wells. But now the heart has overflowed. Okay, so the star has given forward all of its energy for the creation of things. The land is restored, and Leo's heart has overflowed. Whoa! So now Jupiter's energy has also been spent, and the land is restored in his overflowing heart of mankind.
I made you straighten out tangled threads. Is that like electric discharge?
It must have been as it passed by, pulling them into straights and pulling them with it.
Color tufted cloth with colored threads. That's pretty good, yeah.
And now Enlil's heart overflowing is probably the source of the story of Zeus wrestling the giant snake. That's probably the... So instead of having to wrestle with Venus's comet tail, We now see that Enlil's heart also overflowed, and after that, the land is restored. Peace comes back. Venus finds its orbit, and boom, we have the golden age of Sumer and then Babylon here. So the next slides are merely just pictures. If we want to step through and look at some of
the
these
Inanna you've mentioned, that's the same Inanna, of course, that David Talbot refers to when he's talking about, when she's saying, like, I'm the baddest MFer in the land, and, I'll torch you, the same one, right? Yeah.
Right, she's piling up heads like dust.
Oh, yeah, man. Oh, yeah. Just mean, what? Now, this looks like it's busier than the last one.
Well, it's just bigger. And now we see
who painted it?
in the sky, and we see the animals down below. Also in the lower left there, you see a different stage of the splitting, probably an earlier stage of the splitting of the star. The shape there is much closer to enclosure D in terms of the ratio diameters. And we see also, of course, various forms of plasma shapes that we have seen in other locations, sometimes looking like deer and sometimes like horses and such. But the actual animals are reserved for the lower portions. And what's up in the sky are all these shapes that are reserved, of course, for these explosive events. And some of them have been sort of covered over. But I imagine that this is not exactly what they saw in the sky, but a series of different things in the same region of the sky recorded over and over again.
Where exactly? I'm sorry, it's funny. The way those deer are standing up, it's just funny to me. I don't know why. But where is this painted at? Is it outside or is it in a cave? It's 8
miles of cliff. 8 miles.
8 miles of cliff. This is that 8 miles. And this was just recently found?
You don't step out the door to just paint, a few deer and end up with 8 miles. This is thousands of years of work down there in Colombia.
Uh-huh. So, that's interesting. So where does it go to, from where to where?
Oh, I don't know exactly where it starts or anything. They haven't even officially released coordinates.
Found this
they got the site,
Brazil. In Brazil, right?
Colombia,
that's right. That is, that's something. You see, now what I would want to know is, because that's what these things all mean something, and I don't know what they mean. So to me, I look at it and I just really see a whole bunch of nothing. I'm just being honest. I'd have to have someone point out, you see those dudes running? Well, that's this. Then I'll learn how to. That's the problem, is learning how to read their story. If you got that gift, man.
What I'm telling you is that you can read the Sumerian and then go to Colombia or to Kentucky or to the Aborigines of Australia and see the same shapes over and over again. If you compare this with newspaper rock, it's the same stuff.
Because what's this? What's this over here on the right? What's all that?
Oh, it looks like it was some kind of giant. It may have been that heart, that inscrutable heart, complex and indescribable, with a terrifying wave of power. Maybe. I don't know.
Whoa. That was heavy. I wasn't expecting that.
12,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And the people who existed 12,000 years ago are either not there or their stories didn't get passed on because of the floods and all that.
I got a couple questions for you.
Go ahead.
They're good ones. They're good ones. So you
show the next slide, and we'll end on the next slide.
Today, when I was sitting around, and things would come to my head. Okay, now just yesterday or today, actually, this morning, I watched it twice. Just saw the Predator. And I know some people go, oh, that's kooky. Well, you know what? What do you think about Hollywood and the whole predictive, programming? Do you think there's anything to that, or do you think that's just nonsense?
You mean where they predict events, or do you mean where
Well,
they try and get you
like
to?
they're showing us something and probably telling us a bunch of truths in it, and we wouldn't even know. But that's their way of relieving their guilt.
That's
By,
human
we told you.
story. There's all sorts of human things like that happen like that, but just as more often than not, they're also wrong. You know.
Okay. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that Hollywood planned the end of Kobe Bryant. They loved Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
But how did they make a cartoon that showed him dying in a helicopter?
I know. Well, the thing, it's a couple questions here to ask you. So, first of all, it's a softball. You're gonna hit it out of the park. Do you think it's possible that other beings live on other planets in our galaxy?
I think it's almost.
You think it's almost what?
Certain. Statistically, I think it's almost a certainty.
Ding.
But it doesn't mean that they are, of equal ability to us or anything. They may not be anything like us at all. They may not even be able to leave.
Right. Yep. Okay, number 2. Do you think it is possible that some older civilizations have achieved long-distance space flight, star to star?
Yeah, I think that's also almost certain.
Okay, that's 2. Ding, ding. I agree with you. Do you think it's possible that they have visited Earth?
I think that it's possible, it's looking more likely every day, but they weren't named Enki or Enlil.
Right. Okay. Not my mind, 100%, right down the middle. Okay, now, of those that have visited Earth, wouldn't it be more likely that if even 1% of them crashed and were found by the government, do you think that's possible? You know what I mean?
I think it's possible.
Yeah.
But it's not a scientific theory. It's just, I get into conspiracy theories too. But it wouldn't be a scientific to go off of.
The next question I was going to obviously ask you is, do you think the Bob Lazar is for real?
Bob Lazar? No, I think he's a fraud.
You think he's a fraud? Yeah. I do too. We agreed. Yeah. Now I want to ask you your, what do we got here? Is there anything else that you want to share with us while we got you?
I mean, that's my presentation. I think that it's
right
absolutely marvelous.
Dude,
I want to go ahead.
You're uncanny, man. You're right on the nose. 2 hours finishing up. That's cool. I'll shut up.
Well, I am very thankful for the work of Cardona and Talbot and John Cook and all those guys. They can't help that they weren't 100% right, because we didn't really have access to enough data until very, very recently, really. I mean, look at this Columbia site just came up. And although Enki in the World Order is not a new text, it may not be a very commonly known text, even in academic circles. It's been translated a while, but I certainly wonder if Sitchin himself had seen it, but it makes it very clear that they can't be biological people, because you can't be the eldest son and also be a younger brother. That's not a thing. Well, but it's compelling.
Yes,
it's a very compelling.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I just meant the whole Sitchin thing.
Some of it's uncanny, like that we're starting to look to put metals into the atmosphere, and it makes you wonder, or like some of the New World Order, which is a real thing. The New World Order is a real thing. I don't really care what anybody says. You can watch people from the New World Order talking about the New World Order. We have it on camera. They're very open about it. but there's just no proof that they're, that they're descendants of aliens or that they're secret kings or Illuminati. Nothing proving that. Mostly, for the most part, they just seem like really rich people who are full of themselves. It doesn't give them the right to spray things into the air, but they're going to anyways. But I don't think that they got the idea because they need to save the planet Nibiru, because Nibiru doesn't appear. If it is a planet, then it's probably Uranus, but it may actually be a place like in the sky for which Jupiter is able to send down bolts of energy. Mm-hmm. They have nothing at all to do with aliens, Mm-hmm. But just think of how amazing the sky, how much more interesting it was. And I hope in the next era that there's some of us who are willing. I've certainly spent money on this community, and I hope that there's more of us willing to hire out the artists to do the work and to actually, graft this all out. Or maybe somebody will at least go through Universal Sandbox and create the simulations I'm talking about. I'll make sure that your audience gets the video clip I was talking about that shows the three-body problem, so they can get an idea of how complex these motions were, and also the problem with how they don't keep going, because the three-body problem is just in an unstable situation, and it has been solved mathematically. But I don't think anybody's come up with a permanent way of keeping the three-body problem. But it's also interesting, these shapes, a lot of them that have shown up in earthworks in Ohio. They end up showing what looked to me, based on the video, to be Lagrangian points. And these Lagrangian points indicate places where Earth could have existed in an orbit around all of these bodies up in the sky at the same time. Or maybe they were observing from the ground this tree, and it was actually other bodies existing in the Lagrangian points around these three bodies. Either way, it's pretty fascinating and a lot more complex and a lot more interesting, which may not sound like Occam's razor, but that's actually what you would expect with Occam's razor. You would expect a situation to be not so perfectly solved, but also simply explained. And the simplest way of explaining this issue is, as it splits apart, trying to conserve angular momentum, sharing charge, sharing material, and this leading to very complex motions in the sky. And that's how we ended up with retrograde planets and moons doing weird, activities in the sky. I mean, it wasn't an accident. It was the breakdown of this system, and it was probably the most terrifying and a stupendous thing that has ever, and maybe will ever, happen to humanity. I mean, if we don't get to other planets to meet and have wars with aliens that we probably shouldn't have, it probably will be the most stupendous thing.
I was going to bring up, I know it's total Hollywood, but it was a great movie. But they were talking some stuff that was interesting. I wrote it down, something called spontaneous. I know with your intelligence, you'll put that together right away. Spontaneous speciation. Aliens having the tech to add the best qualities of whatever race they run into their DNA.
Maybe
augment them. They could be that advanced. And one day we probably will be.
As far as EPMC is concerned, we're only concerned if there's evidence. Speculation is always got to be labeled as speculation.
You got me there. What's EPMC?
That's the extended plasma electromagnetic cosmology. That's the cosmology that I've been providing. It's an open source cosmology that anybody can go out and do this research. And if you can provide evidence, you can certainly write the papers. There is no reason why you can't be involved, why a person can't be involved in this research. Just because they aren't getting published in some kind of journal or some kind of secret society of back scratching grant writer.
Yes.
There's no real room for that in the future of mankind, or the future of mankind will end.
Yeah. I agree. I agree 100% with that. And we need to teach more critical thinking in our schools. They don't ever teach that.
The local schools here, because they were teaching Common Core mathematics, which isn't mathematics. It had emojis and stuff.
Yeah.
And they were teaching critical race theory and calling it diversity education, and those are not the same thing at all.
Yeah.
So it is a huge problem. That's the socialism thing.
Yeah, it's memorize and regurgitate on command. Basically, that's what school's been turned into.
Well, it's definitely not teaching people to be individuals and to be deep thinkers on their own, of their own right.
Yes. You hit it right on the head, man. That's exactly right. Yep. And we got to wake this country up, because we're less than half of what we could be if we just opened our eyes and looked at the evidence. But a lot of people just want to watch TV, and how can you blame them? Because they're working, and it's hard. It's not easy. So. But for a guy like me, I'm retired. It's either that or, I don't know, play golf. I'd rather do this. It's great. It's fun. Meet people like you and have excellent conversations like this. Now, of course, I'm going to have to listen to this 2 or 3 times, and I will.
That's fair.
And then as I'm gnawing on it, then I might come back with a question, or, because I had 100 of them while you were reading. I could barely keep my mouth shut. But that just meant I was interesting. It was really a good chat.
Way, right? It's a mind-melting revelation.
Absolutely.
Series of revelations.
Yeah, it was a mind-melting chat. I loved it, man. By the way, just
yeah. Happy early birthday!
Thank you. 39 again. All right. Well, listen, I had a great time. This chat, like I said, I need to chew on things. I'll yeah.
Well, have a good night. Glad
You
we could
too.
do this.
Thanks, Ramon. Me too. Anytime. You know that. I do like a lot of Ramon's theory, and his interpretation of the text was marvelous. I'd like to thank him for coming on, and the more I listen to it, the better I'll understand it. Right now, to me, the reason why I brought up Solaria Binaria is that they tend to corroborate each other. That's the point I was trying to make. I'm always interested in what you think, so please leave a comment, like or share. If you can, donate to the cause. I hope you're having a happy, safe holiday season, and I'll see you next time. Take care. I'll see you on down the road. I've always said that people, galaxies, and stars have a lot in common.